They keep telling me to relax your breathing, calm down, or else this test isn't going to be accurate. And that's where I lost it. I knew I wasn't going to be successful in this.
Hey everyone, welcome to the premiere episode of Thank You for Your Interest, a show about professional rejection. I'm Rebekah Sebastian, and that over there on the soundboard is my co-producer, Samantha Gattsek. Hi, Samantha.
Hey, Rebekah, how are you?
I'm good. Are you ready to, just do this?
I am. I'm so excited. We've had this idea for a couple months, but it's also funny that a few months ago we did not know each other, and now we are just ear pods deep in a whole brand new podcast.
I know. Bonding over job rejections at a networking event really can change the whole path of one's life. We're living proof.
Yes, exactly. Well, speaking of rejection.
Oh, we're going to be doing that a lot, by the way.
Kind of the elephant in the room, but not. Do you know how many job rejections you've gotten this year?
Yeah, I may have counted on the spreadsheet. I think my last count was 17 to date this year, and that's not including non-responses. Those are flat out, thank you for your interest, but no. So there's a whole other number that's just ghosts that I don't know. But what about you?
Yeah, I counted 14 job rejections. Like you, there are also a lot of ghosts in that number. I think the 14 also just strictly applies to kind of those traditional jobs that you apply to through a portal or a website. Forget about all the freelance gigs that I applied to where you kind of just send an email off. And again, maybe you hear something back, maybe you don't. Those are a little bit harder to track. So I'll go with 14 though. That sounds like enough rejection for 1 year.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm like, I have you beat, but this is like the one competition where you don't really want to be winning. And yet here I am. That's why I came up with this whole thing.
Yeah. But we like to brag about how rejected we are.
Yeah. I mean, team rejection right here. Well, before we get into this week's episode, maybe we should just tell listeners what they might expect when they listen in to Thank You for Your Interest.
Yeah, of course. So every Monday for the next 8 weeks, you'll be hearing about job rejections that came at pivotal moments in people's lives. These stories were heartbreaking, hilarious, or hellish. And Rebekah, honestly, most of them are a combination of all three.
I was just thinking about this. I'm so grateful to the people who came on and told their stories, because that was part of our hope in starting this, was nobody leads with professional rejection. We're all about the wins and the successes. That's what we post. And nobody wants to talk about all the rejection we're getting, but it happens to all of us. So I'm just so impressed by our brave storytellers and very excited to share them. And visit our website to get in touch with us to tell your story, tyfyipod.com. That's our website, and you can learn more about what we're doing and how you can be on the show.
Amazing.
Well, speaking of the show, should we get into it?
Yes, I can't wait. Let's do it.
Today's guest is Kim. Now, Kim always had a deep conviction that whatever she ended up doing in life, she wanted to be of service. But like so many of us, the path to get to our goal took a lot of detours. And her story really reminds us that sometimes we unintentionally get in our own way. Kim grew up in Arizona. As a kid, her sights were constantly set on things beyond her immediate surroundings.
I grew up with the space program and really frequently seeing the space shuttle launches on TV. That was something that fascinated me from the beginning. These people that could go to space and do work in space. And my biggest dream when I was 5, I can remember, when they asked you what you wanted to be when you grow up, I wanted to be an astronaut and a dinosaur. And I feel like currently I've done half of that. If you follow me on social media, I do have an inflatable dinosaur costume. But the astronaut thing has always kind of resonated with me. I just thought that was so cool. And as I got older, I started kind of putting the pieces together on how would I accomplish that. So when I was in 5th grade, I made a little 5-year plan that by the time I reached high school, I would be doing well academically and situate myself so I could apply for military academies. That was the best way to, in my mind, get into the military, to get into that track that goes into astronaut training. So as I hit my high school years, I did well academically, and then I got a scholarship to a local in-state school that had an ROTC program. So I could still have that dream to do the military to astronaut route. So I immediately signed up for that program and started pursuing that track. At the same time, I declared my major to be nursing. I think my big plan was I was going to be an astronaut that was also some sort of like flight surgeon. I had dreams when I was little to be a neurosurgeon, brain surgeon, that sort of thing. So I was going towards that track, and things were coming together.
But things didn't exactly go to plan. Can anyone relate? Kim encountered resistance when something she hadn't previously considered an issue forced her to reevaluate.
2 years into college, you're basically evaluated to see if you can pursue an officer candidacy sort of thing. And so they were going over stuff for me. And in my medical history, I was diagnosed with ADHD in 1995. I've been on medication since the 90s. It was an appropriate diagnosis. I've had over 20 years, almost 30 years of being on medication for ADHD. And I've never seen myself differently. I was raised by my parents that you learn things differently, but there's no reason why you can't exceed and excel and pursue the things that you really want to do. So coming into that second year of college, they're evaluating my medical background. And one of the disqualifiers to go to this this program during the summer is that if you are diagnosed with ADHD, but actively on medication, you can no longer proceed in the program. That was kind of like my dismissal from Air Force ROTC, even though the cadre and all the people who run it were like, you would be a great candidate.
Kim was essentially told she would have to go off the medication for at least 6 months, complete the evaluation, and upon acceptance to the ROTC, she could then submit her previous diagnosis and medication and request she goes back on the medication to perform her duties, which would likely be approved. Yeah, it didn't make sense to Kim either.
Would you tell somebody with anemia, don't take iron, but go and run 5 miles? And I think at that point, I was like, I have to figure out something else because this pathway is not going to work. That also kind of retooled my dream, I guess, in a way that maybe the astronaut thing is not where I'm supposed to be. But I knew I wanted to do something bigger than myself, to serve the country, to do something.
Kim was not easily deterred. She goes back to the drawing board and doubles down on her interest in serving others, all while heeding the advice of one of her and maybe your childhood heroes.
That being said, I would always apply every year through the USA Gov's portal to be an astronaut, and I never would get anything back. But it was like kind of like my yearly thing. Apparently, Bill Nye, the science guy, also did something similar where he kept applying to be an astronaut. You keep applying because why not? What harm is an application going to do?
I want to know a little more about this desire to serve above and beyond yourself, to do work with a purpose that affects other people so deeply. That seems to be the through line between everything you're talking about. Do you know where and how that started?
Well, my dad served in the military, but he served and went to Vietnam. So he didn't talk a lot about that experience. But to me, when I hit my teen years, I really thought to myself, I need to serve my country and I need to figure out a way to do it. And I think that just kept morphing. Like, I need to serve the country. I need to do something. I need to go into the military. And by the time I'm hitting, my early 20s and realizing that pathway is not going to be something that I'm going to be able to do, I'm going to have to switch it up, but I need to keep my options open. And then my dad also kind of told me when I was younger, if you work with the federal government, they usually take care of you. And then when I was working through nursing school too, one of my uncles worked for the Federal Bureau of Prisons, like the prison system, as a PA. So he was like, you could look at the Federal Bureau of prisons. And I was like, absolutely not. I do not want to be in that environment as a nurse. I wanted to go beyond nursing, beyond one city, one state. I just wanted to be able to have something that resonates with me that I really gave back to this country. And I did something of note. And I don't know, it's just something that always kind of drove me. So, okay, so that gets me to the reserves kind of rejected me. The whole ADHD of it all, I was still feeling all these avenues have not panned out. And as much as it's fun to throw resumes places and just see where it lands, nothing was landing.
Oh, the resumes I've thrown. Unsure what to do, Kim turns to an unlikely source for inspiration.
I was scrolling through Twitter, and so I see this tweet from the FBI that says that they're looking for diverse candidates to apply for FBI special agent positions. And I'm looking at it, and I was like, all right, why not? I haven't tried the Department of Justice, I haven't gone down that pathway yet. Maybe this is it. Okay, so the time I went through was pre-COVID, 2018, 2019. And the process has changed. So then I was like, whatever, I'll just go and like kind of treat this as a joke because you're supposed to put your resume together. And I was like, well, let me just have fun with this resume. And I remember I put movie references in my resume. It said like, I made it like that basic structure of your background and like your skills and what you're good at. I think I even put like next to my education, I was like, the greatest party school ever, Arizona State University. And I'm sending this off to like the FBI.
Wait.
Like,
Go back to the movie references. How did you integrate a movie into your resume?
like I referenced the Fast and the Furious and like Vin Diesel and the whole family. I said, I will treat your loved one like they're part of the Fast and Furious family. I was just having fun with it.
Nice.
Because I was like, at this point, I've gone through so many times where I've just like, they're not going to pick it, so why not have fun with it?
Why
Sent
not
it
beat
off.
the algorithm, right? And like throw it off its game.
I was like, whoever's going to at least read this, the one person that reads this, probably that reads 1,000 of them, they might be like, that was funny. She's not going to be a good candidate, but, give them something fun to read. And so, I was like, all right, no expectations, sent it off, kind of like every other application. And then I ended up getting a response.
Kim's application was viewed and she was contacted to upload additional documentation into the highly secure encrypted portal. Forgetting the FBI might call from an unlisted number, she missed a couple calls because who answers a call from a restricted number?
Well, when you get a number that's from like restricted, you're like, oh, whatever. This is like, I don't know what
Trash,
it is. Well,
yeah.
and apparently when you're going through the FBI special agent selection process, it's an FBI agent.
Likely a blocked number for a reason, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They're calling from parts unknown.
Kim connects with an agent and gets a notification on the portal to take a routine standardized test at a large testing center. At the time, she was finishing up a traveling nurse contract in Washington state, so she took a few days to drive down through California and over to Nevada, where her next contract was. She took the test during this trip. Kim continues advancing through the process and is told she should report to the closest FBI field office for a meet and greet. She was working in Las Vegas at the time, but as it turns out, there was a meet and greet in her hometown of Phoenix, Arizona, so she decides to go there and takes the opportunity to bring her dad up to speed on her recent pursuits. He had one major concern.
And he was like, you have no professional clothes. I have nothing professional for the FBI. I literally have scrubs, outdoor stuff that is organized by season, and just like random, maybe a dress from like a wedding I was in.
Kim gets her hands on some FBI-friendly attire, and it's time for her first face-to-face encounter with FBI field agents and her fellow applicants.
So I show up to the Phoenix field office. They gather us all in, and they kind of tell us off the bat, you guys can talk to each other. That's okay. We look like we're kids on a college campus, like basically.
Right.
Especially kind of with the age skewed, like everyone's around the same age.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question? You know how the FBI hires for specific roles? Like you could be an accountant in your everyday job and then go be an accountant for the FBI or a lawyer. Do they need nurses? Like, was any part of you thinking you could do this for the FBI?
Sure, yeah. So they do need nurses. I did look that up because as I'm looking when I was applying, I was like, special agent? I don't know if that's me, but maybe they have careers for nurses.
Right.
And they do. But they're occupational health nurses. So you're basically, to me, doing like employee screening so that people can get back to the job.
I see. Not on the field, what you would want to be doing. You're way too adventurous for that.
The first thing that the agent says to me is, I just have to let you know, we saw your resume and we all loved it. It was hilarious. And I'm like sitting there because the first thing I hear is, we saw your resume. And I kind of think I blacked out for a second. I was like, oh God, they think I'm like a joke or something. And then to subsequently hear, we thought it was hilarious. We like, you had people laughing. It caught our attention. And then, the agent was like, we do like to have fun at the FBI. And yeah, we were glad to see that. And then the agent promptly said, but before we send this file off to Washington, you need to clean this up so it's professional. And I said, yep,
wow.
Absolutely. Sure. No problem. And so that agent was super gracious and everything, put everything together. And also at this time reassured me, because I think it's probably written on my face a little bit that I was like, I feel like a fish out of water here. And that agent was like, I just want to tell you, we have had people come from so many different backgrounds. We've had event planners make incredible special agents. That agent diffused a little bit of that imposter syndrome that I was getting, without me realizing it a little bit, that you can have a place here and we see potential. That's why we keep advancing you and we want you to keep doing this.
With her imposter syndrome under control, Kim is able to confidently move to the next round, a panel interview with 3 special agents.
When that day came up, I got to the interview and I just was like cool as a cucumber. I don't know what came over me. I just was so prepared that I was just like, there's no way I can mess this up unless like I'm literally not what they need. Like it's not going to be for any fault of my own. So I walked in there. I just remember the first thing I did was like, I cracked a joke because that's what I always do. And I got 2 out of the 3 of them to laugh. And I was like, oh, I got this in the bag. Walked out of the room after that was all said and done. And immediately was like, I have this. Like I had this surge of confidence and I was like, all right, here we go. So you have to wait a little bit longer for that. Get the email to check my portal. There's a conditional appointment offer there to be an FBI special agent. And then I was like, whoa, this is really real.
Kim has successfully made it to a pivotal part of the hiring process. She moves on to a physical fitness test, which took place in the summer in Arizona, but that was no problem because she had been training in Las Vegas. Pass. Then she has a background interview where she has to list off and verify her previous addresses, which was no small task given her work as a travel nurse.
So I came in with like a legal pad, and that agent took one look at me and was like, this is going to be long. I said, you're not going to like me. Then they schedule you for the polygraph.
We've all had high-pressure interviews, but can you imagine being hooked up to a polygraph while answering questions? A field agent left Kim a voicemail. Yes, she let it go to voicemail, and basically gave her everything she needed to know to successfully pass the polygraph test.
Make sure you show up at this time. Make sure you have this. You know, if you normally do this for your morning ritual, continue to do it because, you know, you need to not deviate from things before you do a polygraph.
Interesting.
So in my head, I was like, I think already like, okay, polygraph. That's something I can't prepare for. And I like walk into the office. It's a whole thing. You get through the process and then there's a whole room they take you back to.
Does it look like an interrogation room at a police station like we see on TV or no?
No, it's just like a dude's office with the setup in there.
That's good. So that's got to put you at ease a little. You don't feel like you're in the
there's
criminal's
no big old lights
role.
over me, nothing like that.
Okay.
And I don't know what to expect, but it's like everything I have to base off of is like all the true crime documentaries.
That's all we have.
And I was like, oh no, like what's about to happen? But they were very friendly. They explained everything before they hooked everything up. They explained, this is what we're going to be asking you questions about. This is how we do X, Y, and Z. So that part is actually very accurate. Then they hook you up. And I mean, it's the hookup around the chest, the finger thing. I don't think I was facing the actual polygrapher. I think I was facing away. So it starts, right? And so they establish the baseline. Essentially, like, they're asking you, you're doing this to get a security clearance, top secret security clearance. So there's at this one point, the agent giving the test asked me these questions, and there is a method in which they do it. And they do come back around if there is something that they really need to hammer through. And that was starting to happen. And I picked up on it. And I know something changed within me. And the worst thing actually, that this agent said to me was, you need to relax your breathing. That's like telling anybody, that's like me, I'm a nurse, telling somebody, breathe normally for me. You're not going to do that. This agent is asking me this question. They keep asking me this question. We're going to do this again. They keep telling me to kind of like relax your breathing, calm down, or else this test isn't going to be accurate. In not so many words. And that's where I lost it. I knew I wasn't going to be successful in this because
Oh,
it's like,
so it felt inevitable. You're like, I'm bombing. But I know you
yeah,
can't disclose the question, but was it that you couldn't access the answer? Were you two in your head? Were you saying the same thing over and over? What do you think was the disconnect?
it was the two in the head because it
Yeah.
started to be like, did that actually happen? Maybe I did have something that happened because they keep coming around to this. And then just telling me to like relax your breathing, that was like, that was it. That's the nail in the coffin right there.
Yeah.
And like I actively felt it slipping away.
Oh,
Um, when it was done, and this lasted a few hours, when it was done, the agent, concluded the test, kind of gave me like a soft, like, you didn't pass this in not so many words. Um, basically the agent was like, when you come into the FBI, you have to remember that you're no longer a private citizen. But for some people, maybe being a private citizen will be the path that you should take. And I wanted to be like, I mean, confirmed, failed, thank you. Like,
oh
basically telling you, like, you're
man.
going to keep being a private citizen, which,
Yeah.
fine, whatever. And I remember I was like, I got back to my car and I was like, I'm just going to go hike. Like, for me, I just needed to get that pent up whatever out.
Yeah.
And what I didn't realize at the time was that I was actually having an anxiety response. And for me, up until like that point in my life, I haven't had really any experiences with anxiety. I've had a lot of experiences with a lot of other emotions, but not directly like anxiety in that atmosphere. They said, if you really want this, reapply the next
Ooh.
cycle. And, yes, you have to start through it all over again. And I will tell you this, during the meet and greet, there was somebody that was reapplying.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah. So, I mean, it happens, right?
Could
But
you see yourself going down the path again, starting at point one?
I think I could, but I think for some reason I was like, I don't think this is it.
Yeah.
And I think part of it was maybe I knew it was on the horizon, um, to an extent. Like, I'm more needed in a healthcare setting, I think is what really resonated to me as I walked out of that office. Ultimately, I was like, when I get the actual formal results, even though I already knew it was coming, I was like already resigned to the fact that this isn't where I was supposed to be.
Mm.
This is not what I wanted. And in fact, a few weeks later, when I did get the email to check my portal, opened it up and it said, essentially you failed the polygraph and, you are no longer advancing in the process. I read that before work and I like had the biggest smile on my face. I walked into work with my head high and I was like, I didn't want it. I did not want that path at all. At all.
Kim is at peace. The relief is palpable. Sometimes you have to learn what you want by not getting what you thought you wanted. Not long after her FBI rejection, something happened. Something big that would affect all of us, but especially Kim.
COVID started. And I would have been at Langley right when COVID started. And independent on like FBI protocols, the biggest thing for me that I was like, oh my God, I would have had such a mental crisis of seeing myself having to go through learning a new career that is very, very high stakes and seeing all of my friends petrified. And we were all petrified of what was going to happen with COVID. And I wasn't at the bedside of somebody. I wasn't that supportive team member. I wasn't that nurse with almost 8 years of experience at that point that is needed in that role. Instead, I'm like trying to be a little FBI agent over in Langley. I think knowing me, I would have been like, I need to go back to what I do. This is really not where I'm supposed to be now with COVID happening. That's the moment too where I could actually honestly say too, working coast to coast with COVID, I've served my country.
Well,
so
thank you for saying that. I'm so happy to hear you say those exact words because all I can think is, yeah, Kim, you never made it to a federal agency, but let me be very clear and say thank you for your service because we are so grateful. I am so grateful you were where you were in 2020. It's people like you that I mean, I can't overstate that. So to know that you have that recognition within your own life, I'm so happy to hear that. But yes, thank you a million times to you and your colleagues. I'm curious, for people facing a crossroads in their career or who see three connected paths, but you kind of sometimes have to make that choice from one to the other. Maybe people earlier in their career or total career changers, what would you tell them?
So I really like the Olympics. And one of the things that they talk about with these athletes' stories is that these are people who've been working for the Olympics for like 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 years to get to like their first Olympics. And one of the things they talk about is that a dream delayed is not denied. Sure, a straight line between, point A to point B is great. But if you've got to go on a squiggly line, there's nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah. Thanks for showing us the squiggly line way. It was such a ride. It was so much fun. And if you're up for just one more minute of fun, I'm going to transition us into a fun little game where I'm going to read off a couple of fictional TV or movie bosses, and you're going to name the one that you would rather have as a boss.
Ooh, okay. Yeah,
Are you down?
for sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Michael Scott or Ron Swanson?
Ron Swanson.
Hands down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Vice President Selena Meyer or President Bartlett?
Veep. You got to go with the Veep.
It's a very Veep. We're in our Veep era, actually.
Yes, we
Let's
are.
hope. All right. And last but not least, Miranda Bailey or Miranda Priestley?
As much as I don't even watch Grey's Anatomy, I got to go Bailey. I mean, I'm a nurse.
Yeah, you got to be in that room.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
Honestly, Devil Wears Prada, like, Miranda Priestley scares me. I only watched that movie once, and I was like, ooh, this is not the movie I would rewatch.
Yeah, imagine if she spoke into what you should wear to the FBI. Actually, that would have been cool.
That might have been actually helpful. I don't know.
Well, Kim, this was a blast. And all right, check out People Are Wild. The link will be in the show notes. And Kim, thank you so much for sharing your story on Thank You for Your Interest.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, Kim's story, so good. Thank you again to Kim for being on the show. And if you guys enjoyed her story, she has a podcast called People Are Wild and talk about workplace stories when you're a nurse in the ER. She's got some good ones. So definitely check that out. We'll put the link in the show notes. And Samantha, if people like wild work stories, then they're going to love our last segment.
Absolutely. Before we get into our Not Safe for Work segment, Rebekah, have you ever had a job in retail as a teenager? I think when I was growing up, almost everybody had a job at the mall. Somehow, thank God, I managed to escape that. But did you ever have a job at the mall?
Well, actually, I worked in retail, but they were always like freestanding stores, which was kind of cool. Although I didn't get to get like a pretzel on my breaks. But this is one of my most burned and blazed in my memory job memory stories. So I'm a teenager, like a very young, just got my working papers eligible for a job kind of age. And I went into let's call it a large clothing retailer that is a chain that everybody has in their hometown.
Mm-hmm. Like the ones that had the sweater that had the brand name right across the chest. One of those brands.
One of those that are folded in just a specific way. And I guess my interview was, I just really, really wowed them because the store manager said, I don't normally do this, Rebekah, but I'm prepared to make you an offer today on the spot. And I'm like really young. I'm feeling like this is such a high stakes situation suddenly.
Mm-hmm.
And then she kind of doubles down and writes the starting salary on a piece of paper and slides it across the desk to me.
That beautiful minimum wage salary slides it down.
And I even at that age had the sense to like think this is laughable, but I didn't laugh and I just looked at that and it was literally less than I made babysitting. And I thought, well, I get a discount here. I'm not sure. And I said, I'm going to need to think about this. Like suddenly I'm hardballing them. Like I'm going to need to sleep on it. And I didn't end up taking it. I just will never forget like how serious, it must have been a strategy. She's like, it makes them feel really important or something.
Yeah, maybe that. It just makes me think of like, you're in a movie asking for ransom or something and it's like, here's what I want and slide it across the table.
There should be a lot more zeros. If you're sliding a paper with a number across a table to someone, it needs a lot more zeros than was on mine.
Rebekah, that just shows that no matter how old you are or where you are in your career, sometimes the things that happen at work are just strange. That's why before we go, Each week, we'll be featuring a voicemail from someone who wanted to share their heartbreaking, hilarious, or hellish work story with us, sometimes anonymously. We like to call this our Not Safe for Work segment. And if you would like to leave us a voicemail, you can go to speakpipe.com/thank you for your interest. This week, we have a voicemail from Trevor, who had to bring his mom with him on a job interview. Let's hear how that went.
Hi, Rebekah and Samantha. I started out my job hunting journey on the wrong foot when I was 12 years old. At that time, I was a shy, nerdy little middle schooler who was a self-described history buff. One day in middle school, I saw an ad in the back of the school flyer looking for students to act as docents and reenactors at the Noah Webster House and Museum. I was so excited for this opportunity, I literally almost passed out, ran home, called, secured an interview, and eventually went to the house to be interviewed by one of the staff members, along with my mother. The person I interviewed with was a lovely woman who had a thick, endearing, very intense Long Island accent. She was immediately impressed by my prepubescent historical showboating of dropping little facts, bragging that I could recite all the presidents in order at age 4. I just knew I was going to get the job. The interviewer started to tell me about the responsibilities I'd be taking on, the schedule that I'd have, and the dress code. A dress code that consisted of a white button-down shirt, dress pants, and nice dork shoes. My mother, who was sitting silently next to me the whole time, burst out laughing. She kept on laughing to the point of crying. She was literally slapping her knee. Myself and the interviewer were so confused. My mom barely choked out words. I'm sorry. I thought you said dork shoes. She continued to laugh and laugh, and the interviewer was not happy. Her demeanor immediately soured. I saw this 4 hours a week, below minimum wage opportunity of my lifetime so far slip through my tiny little hands. The interviewer said she'd call me and walked us out of her office, and as we passed by her door, we saw her nameplate. Her last name was Dorco. Seriously. She never called me, and I never brought my mom to a job interview again.
Thank you for listening to Thank You for Your Interest. I'm your host and the executive producer, Rebekah Sebastian. Our senior producer and audio engineer is Samantha Gattsek. Show art is by Nim Ben Reuven. Our theme music was composed by Your Silent Facade. You can explore their entire catalog exclusively at pitchhammermusic.com. If you have a story you think would be great on the show or want to call in with a not safe for work anecdote, go to tyfyipod.com to learn more. And if you enjoyed this podcast, could you go to the app where you listen, follow or subscribe, whatever they ask you to do? And if you have an extra minute, would you consider going over to Apple Podcasts and leaving the show a 5-star rating and a quick written review? Think of the review section on Apple as this show's letter of recommendation. We need to fill it up with impressive bullets to prove our worth and land our next gig. Most importantly, if this show resonated with you, your friends will probably like it too. Don't keep it to yourself. Tell them, email them, text them, fax them. Just make sure they know. Thank you for listening to Thank You for Your Interest. Until the next rejection, I'm your host, Rebekah Sebastian.
I am moving on. I'm totally fine.